The question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. Quote from Ayn Rand. Julia's story, as we move on from the Christian family, which is her maiden name. Julia was born into that family. They challenged society and its values, and they made a way, a life for themselves. They were ambitious, and so was Julia. She was almost programmed to be that way. While living in Liverpool at her father's boarding house, she met Louis Rogers, a seaman from Guadeloupe. 5 years older than her, they fell in love and were married. Now, Guadeloupe is not part of British colonies, which may be why at some occasions Louis said he was from Jamaica, because he could have citizenship in a different way here. But he came from Guadeloupe, and Guadeloupe was an island where slavery was only abolished in 1848, 10 years before he was born. So his mother would have been a slave, and he was that first generation post-slavery. Now he left Guadeloupe, came to Liverpool, and made a life for himself. And the journey, as we'll see, Antigua and Guadeloupe to Liverpool, and then it will come to Barry. Now, according to the 1891 census, Louis and Julia ran a Grocers in Mill Street, Liverpool, and this was where their first child was born. Now, Louis may well have been French speaking, so it's made some achievement. Now, sadly, he was to die quite young in 1903, but as Elizabeth Edwards says, she stood in the storm, and when the wind did not blow her away, she simply set her sails. And that's how Julia was. Julia and Louis opened the boarding house in Travis Street, and people have to understand, Barry at that time was in a huge period of development. It was an economic mecca, and in fact you could almost say businesses could print money, especially if they had a specialist client group, which in Julia and Louis's case was generally black sailors. Think of Travis Street. 1901 it had 29 houses, 271 residents, and in Travis Street at that time 8 of those residents were guests. Now Julia decided to change her sails and move on after Louis died, and in 1910 she moved to Canada, and this is just a list of her children: Lillian, who died in 1978, Eleanor, who died in 1948, both of them were born in Liverpool, Arthur, who died in 1973, George, pictured on the farm here, was born in Barry and died in 1988. Reuben and Ethel died very young. Reuben was 1 year old, Ethel was 2. Harriet died at 7. She was moved to live Barry with them. Octavia and Mary were both born in Barry, died in 1951 and 1966. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. Maya Angelou. In which case, Julia had many of those moments. She was, in every sense, an adventurer. When her husband died, she started again. And she commissioned her house she was to live in, of green wood. While in Barry, she commissioned that house. 9 children, 2 husbands, 3 countries. She's a symbol of black sheroes and icons. And if Barry helped in any way towards that, we're proud of that. She was, in every sense, a black woman adventurer that's left a legacy of family still living in Canada.